Revenge Girls Stories.
I'm Mireille, 32 years old, and I used to think family dinner invitations meant love, not an ambush. The shock on my face when my parents slipped those loan papers across the maple table, their expectant smiles as fake as the world's greatest daughter mug they gave me years ago. After working since 16, paying off $50,000 in student loans all by myself while watching my brother Alden coast through life on my parents' dime, this was the final straw. They had no idea that before driving to their house, I had already purchased a one-way ticket out of their lives. I'm sharing this from thousands of miles away, but before I tell you how I finally broke free, let me know where you're watching from. And hit subscribe if family financial drama feels all too familiar. Growing up in our middle-class suburban home in Columbus, Ohio, I never questioned why my parents treated me differently than my brother. Alden was 4 years younger, and I always assumed the differences were because I was older or because I was a girl. Our house was nice enough, 4 bedrooms in a good school district, with a yard that Dad meticulously maintains every weekend. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Or at least, that's what I thought. The first real taste of inequality came when I turned 16. While my friends got cars, or at least driving lessons from their parents, I got a lecture about responsibility and independence. Mireille, we think it's important for you to learn the value of hard work, my mother explained one evening. We've arranged for you to interview at Kroger this weekend. Mrs. Thompson is the manager there, and she owes me a favor. Within 2 weeks, I was working 20 hours a week as a cashier, after school and on weekends. My parents made it sound like they were doing me a favor, teaching me life skills that would serve me well in the future. I believed them because, well, they were my parents. Why would I question their wisdom? Meanwhile, Alden was 12 and already being groomed for greatness. His football equipment was top of the line. His weekends were filled with travel teams and specialized coaching that I know now wasn't cheap. Alden needs to focus on developing his athletic abilities, Dad would say proudly. He has real potential for a football scholarship. When it came time for me to buy my first car at 18, I had saved up $3,000 for my grocery store job. It got me a used Honda Civic with 120,000 miles and a mysterious rattle that never quite went away no matter how many times I got it checked. I was proud of that car because I had earned it myself. 2 years later, when Alden turned 16, my parents surprised him with a brand new Ford Focus. Not a luxury vehicle, but certainly nicer than anything I could have afforded at that age. The excuse this time? Football practice runs late and we can't always be there to pick him up. He needs reliable transportation. As if my commitments had been less important. School supplies and clothes followed the same pattern. I learned to shop clearance racks and back-to-school sales, carefully budgeting the money I earned. Alden simply made requests that were fulfilled without question. The latest sneakers, the trendy jeans, the expensive graphing calculator that I had saved 3 paychecks to buy myself. Alden is at that age where fitting in is so important, Mom would justify when I dared to point out the disparity. You've always been so mature and practical, Mireille. That's why we're so proud of you. Their praise was always about how independent and responsible I was, while Alden was praised for his achievements and potential. I didn't realize then that they had shaped me into the responsible one by giving me no other choice. During my junior year in high school, I overheard a conversation that should have been a red flag. I was grabbing a glass of water from the kitchen when I heard my parents discussing finances in the living room.
We should have enough for Alden's full tuition by the time he graduates, especially if he gets any kind of athletic scholarship to supplement, Dad said. What about Mireille's fund? Mom asked. There was a pause before Dad replied. Well, we always plan for her fund to be more limited. She's already showing she can make her own way. Plus, with her grades, she'll probably get academic scholarships. I stood frozen in the hallway, the ice in my water glass clinking accusingly. They had always told me they had college funds for both of us, just not how they were proportioned. I retreated to my room without letting them know I had heard. But something shifted in me that night.
When senior year came around and it was time for college applications, I threw myself into scholarship applications. I applied to 23 different scholarships, writing essay after essay late into the night after finishing my homework and work shifts. I won 7 of them, totaling about $8,000 for my first year. When I proudly announced my scholarship success at dinner, Mom patted my hand and said, "See, we knew you'd figure it out." Dad added, "That independence is going to serve you well in life, Mireille." Neither mentioned how much they would contribute. When I finally worked up the courage to ask, they looked uncomfortable. "We set aside $12,000 for you," Mom said, "but that's really all we can manage with our other expenses." Those other expenses included a finished basement with a home theater system that was installed the same month, primarily so Alden and his friends would have a cool place to hang out. High school graduation should have been my moment to shine. I was valedictorian, giving a speech I had worked on for weeks. My parents sat in the audience, clapping at appropriate moments, taking the obligatory photos, but the celebration dinner afterward was cut short because Alden had a football scrimmage they didn't want to miss. "You understand, right, sweetie?" Mom asked, not really waiting for an answer. "This coach from Central State might be there watching. It could be such an opportunity for Alden." I nodded and watched them rush out, leaving me with a half-eaten slice of celebration cake and the check they casually suggested I could cover with some of my graduation money. As I prepared to leave for State University with my partial scholarship and the knowledge that loans would cover what my parents' contribution and my savings couldn't, I still clung to the belief that I was simply learning valuable life lessons, that someday all this responsibility would pay off and they would recognize my achievements with the same enthusiasm they showed for Alden's completed passes and touchdown runs. I packed up my old Honda myself, hugged my parents goodbye in the driveway as they wished me luck, and drove toward what I thought would be a fresh start. Little did I know, the patterns established in my childhood would only intensify as we all grew older. Walking onto campus that first day, I felt a surge of freedom and possibility that made my heart race. My dorm room was small, but entirely mine, or at least half mine, shared with a roommate named Jessica who was from the western part of the state. For the first time in my life, I was making decisions without the shadow of my family's expectations. I could stay up late if I wanted, eat ice cream for breakfast, or spend an entire Sunday reading novels instead of working. That fantasy lasted exactly 2 weeks until my first tuition installment payment reminder arrived. Despite my scholarships and my parents' contribution, I still needed to cover about $6,000 per semester, plus books, supplies, and living expenses. The financial aid office helped me secure student loans, but it quickly became apparent that I would need to work if I wanted to eat anything other than ramen noodles or have any kind of social life. I found a job at the university bookstore that gave me 20 hours a week. When that wasn't enough, I added 10 hours at a coffee shop near campus. My typical day started at 5:30 in the morning for the opening shift at the coffee shop, then classes, then an evening shift at the bookstore, followed by homework until my eyes wouldn't stay open anymore. While my roommate and other friends on my floor went to parties and football games, joined clubs, and made memories, I was measuring my life in 15-minute increments, maximizing every moment to maintain my grades while earning enough to survive. I couldn't afford to lose my academic scholarship, so sleep was often the sacrifice I made. My parents called once a week, usually Sunday evenings. The conversations followed a predictable pattern. "How are your classes going?" Mom would ask. "Fine," I'd say, too tired to elaborate. "Are you eating properly?" would be the next question, followed by, "Are you being careful with your money?" They never asked if I was happy, or if I was making friends, or if college was everything I had dreamed it would be. They certainly never asked if I needed anything. The few times they visited campus, they found fault with everything. My apartment was in such a rough neighborhood, even though it was standard student housing. My furniture from thrift stores was shabby, but they offered no solutions. They took me to lunch at chain restaurants where they would scrutinize the menu prices before ordering and remind me not to order anything too expensive because, money's tight. Meanwhile, Alden was finishing high school as the star quarterback with scouts from several colleges showing interest. When he was accepted to Midwest University with a partial athletic scholarship, my parents threw him a huge party. I couldn't attend because I had finals and couldn't afford the bus ticket home, but Mom sent pictures of the elaborate cake and decorations. 2 years after I started college, Alden joined the ranks of university students. The differences in our experiences became even more stark. One Tuesday evening during my junior year, I received a call from Mom. "Guess what? We just got back from setting up Alden's apartment," she announced, excitement evident in her voice. "Oh, I thought he was staying in the dorms," I replied, mentally calculating how much an apartment near Midwest University would cost. "Well, he was going to, but you know how important his sleep is for performance, and he really needs his own space for focusing on football and studies. We found him this adorable one-bedroom just 10 minutes from campus. Your father and I co-signed the lease." "That's great," I managed to say, looking around my own cramped apartment shared with 2 other girls to split the rent 3 ways. "We got him all new furniture, too, and a new laptop for his coursework. The coach said all the players need good computers for reviewing game footage." I glanced at my own laptop, secondhand and already showing signs of impending failure, held together in one corner with duct tape. "How's he going to handle rent and expenses?" I asked, genuinely curious since Alden had never worked a day in his life. There was a pause before Mom answered. "Oh, we're covering that. Alden needs to focus on football and school. The scholarship covers tuition, but we're handling living expenses." "The scholarship covers all his tuition?" I couldn't help asking. "Most of it. We're picking up the rest. But it's an investment in his future. A sports career could really set him up for life." After the call ended, I sat on my bed and for the first time in years, allowed myself to cry from the unfairness of it all. My parents had told me there wasn't enough money in my college fund, yet somehow there was plenty for Alden's apartment, furniture, laptop, and the rest of his tuition. That night marked a turning point in how I viewed my family dynamic. It wasn't that I was being taught responsibility while Alden was being babied. It was that they valued him more, invested in him more, believed in him more. The realization was both heartbreaking and liberating. I stopped expecting equal treatment and focused entirely on my own path forward. As my college years progressed, so did my student loan debt. Despite working 30 hours a week and maintaining a full course load, I had to take out additional loans to cover rising tuition and basic living expenses. By the time graduation approached, I was looking at $50,000 in student loan debt. My final semester was a blur of job applications, interviews, and final exams. I was determined to secure a position before graduation, knowing I would have no financial safety net. When I received an offer from a marketing firm in Chicago 2 weeks before graduation, the relief was overwhelming. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but it was a foot in the door and included health insurance. Graduation day arrived with surprising weather, sunny and warm after a week of spring rain. I had maintained a 3.8 GPA despite my work schedule, graduating with honors. My parents attended the ceremony, arriving just before it started and leaving immediately after to get back for Alden's spring football game. "We're so proud of you," Dad said, giving me a quick hug. "But we need to hit the road. Alden's game starts at 4 and we promised we'd be there early to help set up the tailgate." Mom handed me a card with a $50 gift card to Bed Bath & Beyond. "For your new place in Chicago," she explained. "Every little bit helps when you're starting out, right?" I thanked them with a practiced smile and watched them hurry to their car. $50 toward building a new life, while they had spent thousands making sure Alden had everything he needed from day one of his college experience. That evening, I celebrated with my roommates and a few friends from classes, people who had seen my daily struggle and respected my work ethic. As we shared cheap champagne and reminisced about our college years, I realized that I had built something valuable after all. Not the family support I had always craved, but self-reliance that could never be taken from me. 2 weeks later, I packed everything I owned into my still rattling Honda Civic and drove to Chicago. Student loan statements arriving at my new address before I had even unpacked. The grace period would end in 6 months. The countdown to repayment had begun. My first apartment in Chicago was a studio on the north side that could generously be described as cozy, but was more accurately tiny and overpriced. Still, it was mine, paid for with my own salary, and represented the first real space that belonged just to me. I furnished it with secondhand finds, Facebook Marketplace bargains, and a few strategic purchases from discount stores. The entry-level position at Marshall Marketing paid $42,000 a year, which sounded impressive until I calculated my take-home pay after taxes, health insurance, and retirement contributions. Once my 6-month student loan grace period ended, $600 would disappear from my monthly budget for loan payments. I created a spreadsheet to track every expense: rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, student loans, and a small emergency fund allocation left almost nothing for entertainment or new clothes or an occasional dinner out. I packed lunches every day, found free events around the city for entertainment, and learned to cut my own hair from YouTube tutorials. 3 months into my new life, Mom called to discuss Thanksgiving plans. "We're expecting you home for the holiday, of course," she said, as if it were already settled. "Grandma and Grandpa will be coming, and Aunt Susan and Uncle Rob. The whole family will be there." "I'm not sure I can make it," I replied carefully. "I just started this job, and I don't have much vacation time accrued yet." This was partially true. I had only 2 personal days available. But the bigger truth was that I couldn't afford the $300 round-trip bus ticket home, not with my first student loan payment looming. "Surely they'll give you Thanksgiving off. It's family time." "I'll see what I can do," I promised non-committally. 2 days later, I emailed that I wouldn't be able to make it home for the holiday. I spent Thanksgiving Day alone in my apartment with a rotisserie chicken from the grocery store and mashed potatoes made from a box mix, watching old movies on my laptop. When I called home that evening to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, Dad answered with a hint of disappointment in his voice. "We wish you could have made more of an effort to be here. Alden drove 5 hours after practice yesterday to make it home. Family should be a priority." What he didn't mention was that Alden drove home in the car they bought him, probably with gas money they provided, to a guaranteed free meal and likely some spending money to take back to school. The comparison wasn't fair, but neither was their expectation. During a family call around Christmas, which I also missed due to work obligations, Mom put me on speakerphone so everyone could say hello. "Mireille is working so hard in Chicago. She's being very independent." Uncle Rob chimed in with what he surely thought was a helpful observation. "Well, if you chose a better career path, you wouldn't be struggling so much. Business majors are a dime a dozen these days." No one contradicted him or defended my choices. I heard Alden laugh in the background before changing the subject to his football team's recent victory. As my first year in Chicago progressed, so did my determination to free myself from debt as quickly as possible. Every bonus or small raise went directly to loan payments above the minimum required. I took on freelance graphic design work on weekends, taught myself new software skills through library books, and networked relentlessly at free industry events. In May, Alden graduated from college. I couldn't attend his graduation due to a work commitment I couldn't reschedule. In reality, I volunteered for the weekend shift because I knew I couldn't bear to watch my parents beam with pride and shower him with gifts, while my own graduation had been such a footnote in family history. "We got Alden a car as his graduation present," Mom mentioned casually during our weekly call. "Nothing fancy, just a new Mazda to replace his Ford. He needs something reliable for job interviews." I bit back the observation that I had driven to all of my job interviews in my 10-year-old Honda with over 180,000 miles on it. Instead, I congratulated Alden on his graduation and new car. 3 months later, Alden announced his engagement to Lumina, his college girlfriend. My parents immediately began planning an elaborate engagement party and discussing their contribution to the wedding. "We've always set aside money for both of your weddings," Mom told me when I expressed surprise at their financial involvement. "It's tradition for the parents to help with wedding costs." This was news to me, considering every other financial tradition had bypassed me entirely. Alden's wedding the following summer was a lavish affair at a country club with 200 guests. As his only sibling, I was expected to be a bridesmaid, which came with expenses I could barely afford. The dress alone cost $300, not including alterations. Then came the bridal shower contribution, the bachelorette party expenses, and the wedding gift. I put most of it on a credit card, knowing it would take months to pay off, setting back my student loan repayment plans significantly. During the reception, I overheard my father talking to his brother near the bar. "We're helping them with the down payment on a house as a wedding gift," he said proudly. "Got them into that new development on the east side of town. It's the least we can do to help them start their lives together, right?" I excused myself to the bathroom where I sat in a stall, breathing deeply to fight back tears. The least they could do for Alden and his new wife was more than they had ever done for me. I returned to the reception with a fixed smile, danced when expected, and left as soon as it was socially acceptable. Back in Chicago, I threw myself into work with renewed determination. My performance reviews were stellar, and I was being given increasingly important accounts to manage. My immediate supervisor, Laura, became something of a mentor, recognizing my work ethic and attention to detail. During this time, I met Marcus, an architect who lived in my building. Our relationship developed slowly, coffee dates becoming dinner dates, becoming weekend trips to nearby Michigan. He was kind and ambitious, with a close relationship to his family that both attracted and confused me. "Why don't you ever talk about your family?" he asked one night, 6 months into our relationship. I gave my standard vague answers about growing up in Ohio and having a younger brother, but Marcus sensed there was more. "You tense up whenever family comes up," he observed, "and you always have an excuse not to go home for holidays. What happened there?" That night, I told him everything. The unequal treatment, the financial burden I carried alone, the ongoing preferential treatment of Alden. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "That's not normal, Marie. Families aren't supposed to play favorites that way." "Maybe I'm exaggerating," I offered, suddenly feeling disloyal, despite years of evidence. "You're not," he assured me, "and it explains a lot about why you're so hard on yourself and so reluctant to accept help from anyone." Our relationship continued for another year, but eventually the strain of my financial situation became too much. Marcus wanted to travel, to go out more, to build a life that included more than work and debt repayment. I couldn't match his lifestyle without compromising my financial goals, and I refused to become dependent on his support. We parted amicably, but his absence left a hollow space in my carefully structured life. 5 years after graduation, I reached a significant milestone. I had paid off half my student loans through disciplined living and every extra cent going toward the principal. I celebrated alone in my apartment with a slightly more expensive bottle of wine than usual, looking at the loan statement that showed $25,000 remaining instead of $50,000. The next day, I received a call from my supervisor. The company was opening a new office in Atlanta, and she was recommending me for a senior marketing position there. It would mean a significant raise, greater responsibilities, and a fresh start in a new city. As I hung up the phone, I felt a surge of excitement and possibility that I hadn't experienced since those first hopeful moments on my college campus. Perhaps a physical move would help me establish the emotional distance I needed from my family's expectations and disappointments. I accepted the position without consulting my parents, signed a lease on an apartment sight unseen except for virtual tours, and prepare to relocate to Atlanta. My old Honda finally gave up the ghost just before the move, forcing me to purchase a used Toyota with low mileage that I hoped would last through the next phase of my life. As I packed up my Chicago apartment, I came across the Bed Bath & Beyond gift card my parents had given me at graduation. I had never used it, saving it for some imagined future emergency. The $50 my parents had contributed to my adult life sat unused in a drawer, a perfect metaphor for their minimal investment in my success. Atlanta welcomed me with its humid warmth and surprising greenery. My new apartment was significantly nicer than my Chicago studio, a one-bedroom with actual living space and a small balcony overlooking a courtyard. The promotion came with a 20% salary increase, pushing me into a new tax bracket and allowing me to accelerate my debt repayment plan. The first few months were consumed with learning my new role, establishing relationships with clients and team members, and exploring my new city. I joined a running group that met on Saturday mornings in Piedmont Park, finding community among strangers who gradually became friends. My contact with family dwindled to monthly calls and obligatory holiday check-ins. I sent gifts for Christmas and birthdays, ordered online, and shipped directly to avoid the need to visit. My parents rarely initiated contact unless they had news to share about Alden or needed to confirm my attendance at some family function I would ultimately decline. "Alden and Lumina are expecting," Mom announced during one such call, her voice bubbling with excitement. "You're going to be an aunt. We're going to be grandparents." "That's wonderful news," I replied, genuinely happy for my brother despite our complicated relationship. "When is she due?" "July, so right in the middle of summer. We're already planning to help them convert the home office into a nursery. Your father is talking about taking a week off work to paint and put furniture together." I remembered painting my own Chicago apartment alone, assembling discount furniture from instructions that seemed written in a foreign language, but pushed the memory aside. "That's really nice of you," I said instead. "Well, that's what family does," Mom replied without a hint of irony. "We support each other." Ewan James was born on July 10th, a healthy 8-pound boy with Alden's chin and Rumina's eyes, according to the flood of photos that arrived on my phone. I sent an expensive baby gift basket and a handwritten card promising to meet my nephew soon when work allowed. My parents became devoted grandparents immediately. Their conversations now revolved entirely around Ewan's developments, the cute things he did, and how he was clearly advanced for his age. They drove to Alden and Lumina's house every weekend, babysitting so the new parents could have date nights, bringing elaborate gifts just because, and documenting every moment with photographs they shared in family group texts. 8 months after Ewan's birth, I received a tense call from Mom. "Alden lost his job," she said without preamble. "The company downsized his entire department. They're worried about making mortgage payments with the baby and everything." "That's tough," I said, genuinely sympathetic. Job loss was a fear that lingered in the back of my mind as well. "Does he have any prospects lined up?" "He's looking, of course, but the job market isn't great right now. Your father and I are helping them out temporarily. We're covering their mortgage for a few months until he finds something." I did quick mental math. Alden and Lumina's house was in an upscale neighborhood, which meant their mortgage was likely at least $2,000 per month. My parents were casually covering this expense temporarily, while I had been left to manage $50,000 in student loans on my own. "That's really generous of you," I said carefully. "Well, that's what family does," Mom replied, without a hint of irony. "We support each other." I wanted to ask where this family solidarity had been when I was eating ramen for days straight to make rent while working 2 jobs and maintaining a full course load. I wanted to point out that I had faced hard times alone, while Alden was being cushioned from the consequences of life's uncertainties. Instead, I wished Alden luck with his job search and changed the subject. Despite my family situation, or perhaps because of it, my career continued to flourish. I threw myself into projects, volunteered for challenging assignments, and built a reputation as someone who could handle difficult clients and impossible deadlines. My annual review came with another raise and a small team of junior marketers to supervise. When I led a campaign that landed a major national client, doubling our Atlanta office's revenue projections, I called my parents with the news, allowing myself a moment of hope that they might finally express pride in my achievements. "That's nice, dear," Mom said distractedly. "Listen, can I call you back? We're at Ewan's swim lesson and he's about to go in the pool. I don't want to miss it." "Sure," I said, the excitement deflating from my voice. "No problem." She never called back. 3 months later, I made the final payment on my student loans. 8 years after graduation, after thousands of hours of work beyond my salaried position, after sacrificing vacations and comfortable living and relationships, I was finally free of educational debt. I sat alone in my apartment that evening, the confirmation email from the loan servicer displayed on my laptop screen. There was no one to celebrate with, no one who truly understood the mountain I'd climbed alone. I opened a bottle of champagne I had been saving for a special occasion, poured a single glass, and toasted myself in the mirror. "You did this," I told my reflection, "all on your own." The next day, an email arrived from my father with the subject line, "Urgent Family Matter." The body contained only a request to call home as soon as possible. My stomach dropped immediately, assuming someone was ill or injured. I called during my lunch break, my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. "Dad, what's going on? Is everyone okay?" "Everyone's fine," he assured me, "but we need to have a family discussion and it's best done in person. Can you come home next weekend?" "What's this about?" I pressed, unwilling to commit to a cross-country trip without more information. "It's about Alden and his family. They're facing some challenges and we need to discuss how we can all help as a family." The phrasing sent warning signals through my brain, but concern for my brother and his young family overrode my caution. "I suppose I could fly in Friday night and leave Sunday," I said reluctantly, "but I can't stay longer than that. Work is really busy right now." "That's perfect," Dad said, sounding relieved. "We'll have a family dinner Saturday evening. Your mother will be so pleased you're coming." After ending the call, I sat at my desk feeling uneasy. Years of experience had taught me that family discussions usually meant expectations would be placed on me while accommodations would be made for Alden. Still, I couldn't refuse without seeming callous, especially if my brother was truly in need. I called my friend Rachel that evening, seeking an outside perspective. "This sounds suspicious," she said, after I explained the situation. "They're deliberately being vague about what kind of help they want from you." "I know," I sighed, "but what if it's something serious? I would feel terrible not going." "Then go," Rachel advised, "but have an exit strategy. Book your return flight for right after the dinner if possible. Don't stay overnight after whatever this discussion is supposed to be." Her suggestion made sense. I changed my original booking to a Saturday morning arrival and a red-eye flight Saturday night immediately after dinner. The change fee was worth the peace of mind of knowing I had an escape route. As I confirmed the new flights, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a situation I would regret. Years of family dynamics had taught me to expect disappointment, yet some lingering sense of obligation kept pulling me back into their orbit. The flight to Ohio was smooth, but anxiety knotted my stomach as the plane descended. I hadn't been home in nearly 3 years, making excuses about work commitments to avoid holidays and family gatherings. What was I walking into? And why did it require my physical presence when a phone call would have sufficed? The rental car crunched up the familiar gravel driveway of my childhood home. From the outside, nothing had changed. The same blue shutters, the same carefully maintained lawn, The same ceramic frog by the front steps that had been there since I was 10. But as I cut the engine and sat for a moment gathering my courage, I felt like a stranger approaching unfamiliar territory. I wheeled my small overnight bag to the front door and hesitated before ringing the bell. This had been my home for 18 years, yet now I stood on the porch feeling like a visitor, which I suppose I was.
Mom answered the door, her face lighting up with a smile that seemed genuine, if a bit nervous. "Marie, you made it." She pulled me into a hug that I returned stiffly. Come in, come in. Your father is in the kitchen. We weren't sure which room to put you in since we converted your old bedroom to a home gym years ago, so we made up the guest room." I followed her inside, noting the new furniture, the fresh paint, the updated fixtures. They had clearly done significant renovation since my last visit. The home gym conversion was news to me, though not surprising. My childhood had been systematically erased from this house, one room at a time. Dad emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "There she is," he exclaimed, giving me an awkward side hug. "The big city marketing executive. How was your flight?" "Fine," I replied, setting down my bag. "Uneventful." "Good, good. Well, dinner won't be for a few hours yet. Alden and his family will be here around 5. Can I get you something to drink? Water, coffee? We have that fancy sparkling water you like." I didn't recall ever expressing a preference for sparkling water to my parents, but I accepted the offered beverage and followed them to the living room. The conversation was painfully superficial, touching on the weather in Atlanta, my parents' recent landscaping projects, and a neighbor's new boat. No one mentioned the urgent family matter that had brought me here. At precisely 5 o'clock, the front door opened without a knock, and Alden's voice called out, "We're here!" My brother appeared in the living room doorway, looking much the same as I remembered him, perhaps with a bit less hair and a slight thickening around the middle. Behind him was Lumina, holding Ewan, now a toddler with curly hair and curious eyes. "Marie!" Alden's surprise seemed genuine. "I didn't know you were coming. What a great surprise!" His reaction confirmed my suspicion that this urgent family meeting had been framed differently to different participants. Lumina stepped forward with a warm smile. "It's so good to see you. It's been ages, and you haven't even met Ewan yet." I stood and greeted them, making appropriately enthusiastic noises about how big Ewan had grown and how much he looked like both of them. The little boy regarded me with understandable wariness, hiding his face against his mother's shoulder when I tried to say hello. "He's just shy with new people," Lumina explained apologetically. "He'll warm up over dinner." Mom swept in immediately, taking Ewan from Lumina's arms. "There's my big boy. Did you miss Grandma? I bet you did. I got a new truck for you to play with. Want to see?" Dad was already slapping Alden on the back, pulling him toward the kitchen. "Come see the new grill. Got it last month and it's a game changer. 6 burners and a side smoker." The familiar choreography played out as I stood awkwardly in the living room, neither parent thinking to include me in either conversation. Lumina at least had the grace to look embarrassed, hanging back to chat with me while the others disappeared. "They're always like this when we visit," she said quietly. "It's a bit much sometimes, but they mean well." I nodded, not trusting myself to comment further. Dinner was served at 6, an elaborate spread that featured all of Alden's favorites: pot roast with carrots and potatoes, dinner rolls from the bakery he had loved as a teenager, green bean casserole with the fried onions on top. I noticed there wasn't a single dish that had been my preference growing up. No stuffed peppers, no pasta primavera, none of the vegetable-heavy dishes I had always favored. The conversation revolved entirely around Ewan's developmental milestones, Alden's job search, and my parents' plans to take the family to Disney World the following spring. "You should come too, Marie," Mom said as if suddenly remembering I was there. "If you can get away from work, that is. We know how busy you are." "Thanks for the invitation," I replied, non-committally. "I'll have to check my schedule when you have dates." Ewan grew restless as the meal progressed, fussing and refusing to eat more than a few bites of mashed potatoes. "I think someone's ready for a little break," Lumila said, standing. "I'll take him upstairs to play for a bit. He has some energy to burn before dessert."
I'll help you, Mom offered immediately, already out of her seat. As soon as they left the room with Ewan, a noticeable shift occurred in the atmosphere. Dad cleared his throat and shared a meaningful look with Alden, who suddenly became very interested in rearranging the food on his plate. Marie, Dad began, his voice taking on the formal tone he used for serious discussions. Now that we have a moment, we wanted to talk to you about that family matter I mentioned. I'm listening, I said, setting down my fork and looking between them. As you know, Alden has been between jobs for a while now. He's had some promising interviews, but nothing has quite worked out yet. The right opportunity takes time. Alden nodded soberly. The market is tough right now, really competitive. Meanwhile, Dad pressed on, they've been getting by with our help and Lumina's part-time work, but they're facing some decisions about Ewan's future. Mom returned at that moment, conspicuously without Lumina, and took her seat. She pulled a folder from beneath a serving dish where it had apparently been hidden all along. Ewan is incredibly bright, Mom said, picking up the conversation seamlessly. His preschool teacher says he's advanced for his age, especially verbally and with problem solving. That's great, I said cautiously. There's this wonderful private school, she continued, opening the folder and sliding some glossy brochures across the table. The Franklin Academy. It goes from preschool through 12th grade, so he could have educational continuity. Their early childhood program is exceptional. I glanced at the brochures featuring smiling, diverse children in uniforms, modern facilities, and impressive statistics about college placement. The tuition rates were noticeably absent from the promotional materials. Sounds nice, I offered, still not understanding my role in this discussion. Dad leaned forward, his elbows on the table. The thing is, with Alden's employment situation, they can't qualify for the tuition loan on their own right now, and Alden and Lumina feel strongly that Ewan should start there this fall to get the best possible foundation. I felt a cold sensation spreading through my chest as the purpose of this gathering became clear. The tuition is $38,000 a year, Mom said, sliding another paper across the table. Not a brochure this time, but loan paperwork. We would cover it ourselves, but with retirement coming up and your father's knee replacement scheduled, we just can't take on more debt right now. What exactly are you asking? I said, though I already knew the answer. We need you to co-sign the loan, Alden said, speaking up for the first time. Just temporarily until I get back on my feet with a new job. Your credit is so good now, and you don't have student loans anymore. I stared at him, wondering how he knew about my loan repayment status when I hadn't shared that information with my family. We keep an eye on these things, Dad explained, reading my expression. We're proud of how responsible you've been. Just until Alden's job situation improves, Mom added quickly. It's for Ewan's education. Surely you want what's best for your nephew. You don't even have kids to spend money on, Alden said with the hint of the entitlement that had characterized our entire relationship. And your career is going so well. This is really important to us. My mind flashed through a slideshow of memories. Working night shifts at the grocery store while Alden played video games. My ancient laptop held together with tape while Alden received a new one because he needed it for school. Paying my own way through college while they covered all his expenses. The decades of unequal treatment that had taught me I was less valued, less worthy of investment and support. After all we've done for you, Mom said softly, pushing a pen across the table in my direction. Family helps family. That's what we've always taught you kids. I felt a strange calm settle over me, the kind that comes with absolute clarity. I need to use the bathroom, I said, standing up. Excuse me for a minute. In the hallway bathroom, I locked the door and leaned against it, taking deep breaths. Then I pulled out my phone and checked my flight details. Still 3 hours until departure. Plenty of time. I checked my rideshare app. several cars available within a 10-minute radius. I booked one scheduled to arrive in 15 minutes, then splashed water on my face and looked at myself in the mirror. "You don't owe them this," I whispered to my reflection. "You don't owe them anything." I returned to the dining room where 3 expectant faces turned toward me. The pen still lay where Mom had placed it, beside loan papers, for an amount that exceeded my annual salary when I had graduated college. "I need to think about this," I said carefully. "It's a big commitment." Their faces fell in synchronized disappointment. "What's there to think about?" Alden asked. "It's for Ewan." "I just need some time," I insisted. "I'm going to get something from my car. I'll be right back." I walked out the front door with my purse, leaving my overnight bag behind. The rideshare was already turning into the driveway, earlier than expected. Without hesitation, I got in the back seat. "Airport, please," I told the driver, not looking back at the house where I knew they would soon realize I wasn't coming back. The drive to the airport passed in a blur of suburban landscapes, giving way to highway. My phone began buzzing with texts about 20 minutes after my departure, but I silenced it and stared out the window instead, watching Ohio slip away once again, this time with a sense of finality. At the airport, I moved through security in a daze, finding my gate and sitting with my back to the wall, half expecting my family to appear in pursuit. They didn't. The boarding process, the taxiing, the takeoff, all happened in a strange, disconnected state where I felt simultaneously numb and hyper-aware of my surroundings. It wasn't until the plane reached cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign turning off with a cheerful ding, that the reality of what I had done hit me. I had walked out on my family, left without explanation after they had flown me across the country specifically to ambush me with their financial demands. The sheer audacity of their expectations struck me anew, and I found myself smiling slightly at the memory of their shocked expressions that would surely have followed my exit. Back in Atlanta, I changed my phone number and began the process of creating boundaries I should have established years earlier. 6 months later, when a job opportunity arose in Seattle, I took it without hesitation. I was literally putting an entire continent between us. Now, 2 years later, sitting in my Seattle apartment overlooking Puget Sound, I can say with certainty that walking away was the best decision I ever made. I've built a life based on my own choices, surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not what I can provide. My career is thriving, my finances are stable, and most importantly, I've learned what healthy relationships actually look like. Sometimes the family we choose means more than the family we were born into. Sometimes walking away isn't abandonment, but the bravest form of self-love. And sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately set us free.